Why do some people break through walls while others give up when they hit them? It's not because one has more talent or more opportunity. It's because one chose to shift their mindset. That's the secret we often overlook. Our greatest advantage isn't what we have, it's how we think. Let's start with a simple truth: the way you see the world shapes the way you move through it. Your mindset isn't just an attitude, it's the lens that filters every experience, every failure, every win. And here's the thing: your mindset can be your prison or your passport. Most people don't realize they have the power to choose. Think about it. Two people can face the same challenge, say a business failure. One walks away defeated, blaming the economy, competitors, or bad luck. The other sits with the loss, learns from it, adjusts, and builds again. The difference: not skill, not luck, mindset. When you adopt a fixed mindset, you believe your abilities are static. You avoid challenges, you give up easily, and you see effort as pointless. It sounds harsh, but that's the trap many fall into. On the other hand, a growth mindset opens the door to transformation. You start to believe that skills can be developed, failures are feedback, and success is a journey, not a destination. We've been conditioned to seek certainty, to crave comfort, and to fear mistakes. But if growth is the goal, then discomfort is the requirement. A growth mindset doesn't eliminate fear. It helps you act in spite of it. It reframes failure as data and pain as progress. One powerful way to change your mindset is by shifting your questions. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of saying, "I can't do this," ask, "What skill am I missing that I can build?" When you ask better questions, you train your brain to find better answers. Another key is to reframe the way you talk to yourself. Self-talk is not some motivational gimmick. It's neuroscience. Your brain listens to your internal dialogue and begins to treat it as truth. If you say, "I'm not creative," your actions follow. But if you say, "I'm learning to think differently," your brain gets to work on that mission. Surround yourself with people who challenge your mindset, not just people who validate your comfort. Growth doesn't happen in echo chambers. It happens in environments where ideas are stretched, where feedback is honest, and where failure is part of the process. The world around you will always be unpredictable, but the mindset you bring to it is within your control. When you shift from blame to ownership, from fear to curiosity, from scarcity to possibility, your life changes. This isn't just about personal development. It's about leadership, relationships, creativity, and resilience. A changed mindset builds better families, better teams, better communities. It teaches us to connect, to adapt, to innovate, and to do it with purpose. In the end, changing your mindset isn't just about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. It's about choosing a perspective that empowers action, welcomes growth, and embraces uncertainty with courage. If you want to change your life, start with the one thing you carry with you every moment: your mindset. 5 keynotes of the speech: mindset shapes perception, and perception shapes experience. The way you see the world influences every decision and outcome. A growth mindset sees failure as feedback. Mistakes are not signs of weakness, but stepping stones for improvement. Questions drive transformation. Changing the questions you ask yourself can radically alter the answers your brain finds. Self-talk creates your internal reality. The language you use with yourself wires your brain for either limitation or growth. Growth happens in challenge, not comfort. True development occurs in the presence of friction, feedback, and discomfort. The mindset we carry isn't just a personal trait. It's the filter through which we experience the entire world. Every interaction, every challenge, every decision we make is interpreted through the lens of our mindset. When people say, "Change your thinking, change your life," it isn't just a nice quote. It's a deep psychological truth. Your mindset doesn't just influence what you do, it defines how you see. And how you see the world determines how you show up in it. Think about it. 2 individuals can encounter the exact same situation, yet interpret and respond to it in completely different ways. One sees a setback as the end of the road, while the other sees it as a setup for something greater. One sees competition as a threat, the other sees it as motivation. One sees struggle as a sign to quit, the other sees it as a signal to dig deeper. It's not the event that changes, it's the mindset that determines the meaning. Most people go through life assuming their mindset is a result of their circumstances. But in truth, their circumstances often result from their mindset. The beliefs you hold about the world dictate how you navigate it. If you believe people are inherently against you, you will look for that in every interaction, and your behavior will start to align with that belief. You'll grow guarded, defensive, and skeptical even when others are offering support. You'll miss opportunities because you weren't looking for them. That's the power of mindset. It quietly shapes every moment, decision, and reaction, often without you even realizing it. Your mindset doesn't only affect your behavior, it actually impacts your biology. Research in neuroscience and psychology shows that your thoughts can influence your physical state, your focus, and your resilience. When you approach a challenge with a belief that growth is possible, your brain becomes more engaged, more creative, and more persistent. When you approach a task believing that failure is final, your brain conserves energy, avoids risk, and shuts down effort. That's not motivation talk, that's science. So many of us have grown up absorbing stories that limit us. I'm not a math person. I'm not creative. I've never been good at public speaking. These aren't facts, they're interpretations. They're conclusions we drew, often in childhood, based on a handful of experiences. And the danger is that once these beliefs harden into mindset, they begin to guide your behavior like a compass you didn't choose. You avoid certain opportunities, not because you're not capable, but because your mindset told you they weren't for you. Changing this requires more than just willpower. It starts with awareness. You need to start noticing the stories you tell yourself about yourself. Are they empowering you or limiting you? Are they helping you grow or keeping you stuck? Every time you label yourself, whether it's I'm shy or I'm unlucky, you're reinforcing a mental pattern. Over time, these patterns solidify into identity. And identity is powerful. It's what we protect, defend, and default to in times of uncertainty. The truth is your mindset isn't fixed unless you decide it is. You can change the way you see challenges. You can decide that feedback isn't criticism. It's a tool for learning. You can choose to see risk not as danger, but as opportunity. You can teach your brain to spot possibility instead of problems. It doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means shifting the frame through which you view it. Perspective isn't passive, it's active. It's a skill that can be trained. The more you practice seeing the world through a mindset of growth, curiosity, and possibility, the more evidence your brain will find to support that perspective. You begin to notice different things. You begin to respond differently. And over time, this shift in thinking becomes a shift in being. The world itself doesn't change, but the way you move through it does. And that changes everything. The question isn't whether life will challenge you. It's whether your mindset will empower you to rise through it. When you change how you see, you change what becomes possible. And that is the first and most important transformation. Failure is something most people fear, avoid, and sometimes even deny. But the way we interpret failure determines what we take from it. And more importantly, what we become because of it. If you see failure as a final verdict, you stop growing the moment you hit a wall. But if you view failure as feedback, something powerful begins to happen. You no longer run from it, you study it, learn from it, and evolve. This mindset shift, though subtle, can change the entire direction of your life. In a fixed mindset, failure is an identity. It says, you failed, so you're a failure. That belief doesn't just discourage you, it paralyzes you. You begin to associate setbacks with shame. You take mistakes personally. You avoid challenges because you're afraid of looking inadequate. You limit your efforts because deep down, you don't want to prove that your limits are real. And so, ironically, the fear of failure creates the very failure you're afraid of. But when you adopt a growth mindset, failure becomes part of the process, not the end of it. It becomes data, it becomes a signal, not a stop sign. It becomes information about what didn't work, not information about your worth. With this view, failure isn't personal, it's practical. It's not something to hide or be ashamed of, but something to analyze. The best athletes, creators, leaders, and innovators in the world are not the ones who avoided failure. They're the ones who used it. Failure has a way of exposing weaknesses you didn't know existed. That might sound discouraging, but it's actually a gift. You can improve what you're unwilling to confront. If something isn't working, you need to understand why. Maybe it's a skill gap, a strategy flaw, or an emotional blind spot. Whatever it is, failure reveals it. And once it's revealed, you have a chance to work on it. Growth can't happen in denial. It requires clarity. And failure gives you that clarity if you let it. There's also an emotional component to this. We've been conditioned to equate mistakes with embarrassment. We learn early in school that being wrong is something to hide, not explore. But in real life, the opposite is true. The more willing you are to be wrong, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you improve. And the more you improve, the closer you get to mastery. Failure then is not the enemy of success, it's the path to it. It's important to recognize that failure isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, a missed opportunity, a delayed result, a quiet disappointment. These smaller failures often go unnoticed or unexamined, but they still carry lessons. They still hold insights. If you can get curious instead of critical, if you can ask, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of, why does this always happen to me? You start to shift the role that failure plays in your life. This mindset doesn't eliminate the sting of falling short. It doesn't make rejection or defeat feel good. But it gives you a direction to go instead of a reason to stop. It transforms setbacks into stepping stones. You stop fearing the fall and start building from it. That shift alone can free you from the prison of perfectionism where so many people stay stuck. What's interesting is that once you truly adopt the belief that failure is feedback, you begin to take more action. You become more experimental, more open to risk, more creative. You stop waiting for certainty before starting. Because you know that even if you get it wrong, that wrong will teach you how to get it right next time. And suddenly, momentum replaces hesitation. This kind of mindset takes deliberate practice. It requires you to reframe situations consciously and consistently. But once it becomes your default, it changes the way you approach everything: work, relationships, goals, and even your sense of self. You no longer feel the need to avoid mistakes at all costs because you've realized the cost of avoiding them is never growing. And when that mindset takes root, you begin to move forward with more confidence, not because you know you won't fail, but because you know that even if you do, it will lead you somewhere better. The quality of your life often comes down to the quality of the questions you ask yourself. It might sound like a small thing, But your internal dialogue, the questions running silently in your mind, has the power to shape your beliefs, your actions, and your future. Most people don't realize it, but they live by default questions. When something goes wrong, they instinctively ask, why me? Or what's wrong with me? These questions don't bring clarity. They reinforce fear, doubt, and limitation. The human brain is wired to answer the questions it's given. So if you feed it a disempowering question, it will generate a disempowering answer. But when you shift your questions, your mindset follows. Ask better questions and your mind will start giving you better answers. That is how transformation begins. When faced with adversity, instead of spiraling into blame or self-judgment, imagine asking, what can I learn from this? Or how can this make me better? Immediately, your focus shifts from defeat to development. The challenge doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it changes. You are no longer a victim of your situation. You become an active participant in your own growth. That one mental shift, changing the question, can mean the difference between staying stuck and moving forward. This principle applies not just in hardship, but in decision-making, in relationships, in career, and in moments of self-doubt. The default questions most people live with are reactive. What if I fail? What will people think? What if I'm not good enough? These questions are like mental anchors. They keep you tethered to fear. They focus your energy on what might go wrong, and your behavior starts to reflect that fear. You become cautious, avoidant, and hesitant, not because the risk is too big, but because your questions make it seem that way. But what happens when you start asking different questions? What if, instead of what if I fail, you asked, what if this works? Or what if I grow in ways I can't even imagine? The facts of the situation don't change, but your perception does. And perception shapes emotion. Emotion drives action. Action creates results. It all begins with the question you choose to ask. One of the most powerful shifts a person can make is moving from judgment to curiosity. Judgment ends thinking, curiosity expands it. When something doesn't go the way you hoped, judgment sounds like, I messed up, or I'm not cut out for this. Curiosity sounds like, what can I try differently next time? Or where did I lose focus, and how can I improve? The difference isn't just in tone, it's in outcome. Curiosity opens the door to insight. It gives your brain something to work with. And the more you use that muscle, the more natural it becomes. There is also a deep relationship between the questions you ask and your sense of control. Disempowering questions focus on things outside your influence, what other people think, what the economy is doing, what might happen months from now. Empowering questions bring your focus back to where your power is, your attitude, your effort, your choices. What is one small thing I can do today to make progress? Is a much better question than why am I not where I want to be? The first leads to action. The second leads to rumination. Changing your questions doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is positive. It means choosing a more productive lens. If your mind is a GPS, questions are the coordinates you enter. A question like, why do I always fail? Sends you in one direction, usually backward. But a question like, what skill can I build to overcome this? Moves you forward. Your brain starts scanning for solutions instead of problems. People often look for big changes, new habits, new strategies, new environments, and those can help. But sometimes the most powerful change comes from something much smaller and more immediate. Changing the question you ask yourself in a moment of doubt, difficulty, or decision. Over time, those small internal shifts add up to massive external results. And it starts with just one better question. The way you talk to yourself is one of the most influential forces in your life. Most people don't even notice their self-talk because it happens so fast, so automatically, that it feels like background noise. But that noise becomes your narrative. And your narrative shapes your identity, your decisions, and ultimately your destiny. The words you speak to yourself on a daily basis quietly determine how you feel, what you believe is possible, and how you respond to challenges. You might think you're just thinking, but your brain is always listening. The language you use becomes the script your mind starts to follow. When people say things like, I'm just not good at this, or I always mess things up, they're not describing reality, they're defining it. These aren't harmless phrases, they're instructions. Your subconscious mind absorbs repetition. The more often you repeat a belief, even if it's negative, the more likely it becomes your truth. If you constantly tell yourself you're not smart enough, not strong enough, not creative enough, your brain will find evidence to support that belief. It's not because it's true, it's because your internal dialogue directs your attention. And what you focus on grows. On the other hand, when you consciously shift your self-talk, even slightly, you begin to rewire your mind. Instead of saying, I can't do this, say, I'm still learning how to do this. That one word, changes the entire frame. It moves your mindset from fixed to growth, from limitation to possibility, from fear to progress. And with that shift comes momentum. You start to see yourself not as someone who lacks ability, but as someone who is in motion, evolving, improving. That internal shift shows up in your actions and eventually in your results. Self-talk is not about lying to yourself or pretending everything is okay when it's not. It's about choosing language that keeps you resourceful instead of stuck. For example, let's say you failed at something important. Telling yourself, I'm a failure, is not only untrue, it's unhelpful. But saying, I didn't get the result I wanted, what can I learn from this? Invites growth. It keeps you open, engaged, and future focused. It turns a loss into learning. That's the power of intentional self-talk. It's also important to recognize that your self-talk doesn't just shape how you feel. It shapes how you act. If your internal dialogue is filled with doubt, hesitation, or fear, your actions will match. You'll take fewer risks, avoid challenges, and stay in your comfort zone. But if your self-talk is supportive, encouraging, and curious, your behavior shifts. You become more resilient, more willing to try again, and more open to feedback. In that sense, the voice in your head becomes the leader of your life, and you get to decide what kind of leader it is. One of the best ways to improve your self-talk is to pay attention to your language when things go wrong. That's when your true mindset is revealed. Do you immediately criticize yourself? Do you default to blame, shame, or hopelessness? Or can you pause, take a breath, and speak to yourself with compassion and clarity? The goal is not perfection. It's awareness. When you can notice negative self-talk in real time, you can interrupt it. And once you interrupt it, you can replace it. The more you practice this, the stronger your mental foundation becomes. You develop a kind of internal coach that doesn't sugarcoat the truth, but also doesn't tear you down. It reminds you of your potential. It speaks from a place of growth, not fear. Over time, this voice becomes louder than the voice of doubt. And that changes how you experience everything, from work to relationships to the way you see yourself. We often focus on the external factors of success, tools, strategies, goals. But the inner voice that guides you is just as important. It's with you in every decision, every challenge, every victory. And if that voice is one of belief, resilience, and progress, there's no limit to what you can do. So the next time you hear that quiet voice in your mind, ask yourself, is this the kind of voice I'd want leading my life? If not, it's time to change the conversation. Because the words you speak to yourself will either build your future or quietly sabotage it. The choice is always yours. Growth is never born in comfort. It is forged in discomfort, challenge, and resistance. We often say we want to grow. We want to evolve, we want to reach our potential, but most people want to do it without being uncomfortable. That's the contradiction. You can't build strength without resistance. You can't gain clarity without confusion. And you can't grow into the next version of yourself without going through something that demands it. The truth is, comfort keeps you the same. Challenge changes you. And that's why growth never happens when everything is easy. We are wired to seek safety. The brain is designed for survival, not success. So when something feels unfamiliar or difficult, our first instinct is to retreat. We tell ourselves, this isn't for me, or I'll wait until I'm more ready. But readiness is not a feeling that comes before the challenge. It's a capacity you build inside the challenge. Most people wait for confidence before they move. But real confidence is built by moving through discomfort, not avoiding it. That uncomfortable space between who you are and who you want to become is where growth is born. If you look at anyone who has achieved mastery in any field, you'll find a history of discomfort, not just physical discomfort, but emotional, mental, and even spiritual discomfort. They've had moments of doubt, failure, rejection, confusion. They've faced fear. They've made mistakes, and they've kept going. Because what separates the successful from the stagnant isn't who avoided discomfort. It's who embraced it. Discomfort isn't a problem to solve. It's a process to trust. There's something powerful that happens when you learn to lean into challenges instead of backing away. You discover capacities you didn't know you had. You find strength where you thought there was only weakness. You begin to redefine what's possible for you. And slowly, what once scared you becomes your new normal. Growth rewires your identity, but only if you allow discomfort to be part of the journey. Many people think they're stuck because they're not motivated or not disciplined. But often, the real reason is they've made comfort their goal. They avoid feedback because it's uncomfortable. They delay action because starting feels awkward. They settle for less because reaching for more feels risky. But you can't have transformation without friction. Every breakthrough begins with a breakdown of what's familiar. You have to outgrow your comfort zone. And that means outgrowing the habits, beliefs, and routines that keep you there. Discomfort is not something to be feared. It's something to be respected. It's a signal. It tells you you're stretching. It tells you you're moving towards something meaningful. Think about going to the gym. Growth in strength doesn't come from lifting what's easy. It comes from lifting what challenges you. The same principle applies to your mind. You build mental strength by confronting difficult conversations, pushing through fear, learning new skills, taking risks. That's the real training ground. The most transformative moments in life often don't feel good when they're happening. They feel uncertain, vulnerable, even painful. But looking back, those are the moments that changed us the most. Growth doesn't ask if you're comfortable. It asks if you're committed. And if you're willing to step into that discomfort, to stay in the tension long enough for something new to emerge, you'll discover a version of yourself you couldn't access from the comfort zone. It's also worth noting that discomfort is not permanent. What feels hard today becomes manageable tomorrow. That's how adaptation works. The first time you speak in front of a group, it's terrifying. The 10th time, it's less so. The 20th time, it becomes second nature. But if you avoid that discomfort from the beginning, you never get to see what's on the other side. You stay stuck in the illusion that discomfort is dangerous, when really it's just unfamiliar. The willingness to face discomfort is one of the clearest indicators of growth. It's not about liking it. It's about understanding its purpose. You don't grow despite discomfort. You grow because of it. And once you understand that, discomfort no longer becomes a wall. It becomes a doorway. You stop asking, how do I avoid this? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That one shift opens everything. Because the place you're avoiding, the challenge, the resistance, the fear, that's the exact place where the next version of you is waiting to be built. The power to change your life doesn't start with a massive event or a perfect plan. It starts with a shift in mindset. Everything flows from the way you think. Your mindset determines how you perceive challenges, how you respond to failure, the questions you ask yourself, the words you speak internally, and your relationship with discomfort. When you choose to see failure as feedback, when you begin to ask empowering questions, when you become intentional about your self-talk, and when you embrace discomfort as a path to growth, you stop living by default and start living by design. Change doesn't begin outside of you. It begins within at the level of thought, belief, and perception. The world around you might stay the same, but when your mindset changes, your experience of that world transforms. The results follow. The life you want is on the other side of the mindset you're willing to build. And the choice to start that shift is always in your hands.